If it weren't for me, he'd be sleeping on the streets. My mother's voice echoed through the courtroom with a confidence so absolute that several heads turned in my direction. She sat beside her lawyer with that familiar smile, the one she wore whenever she believed she was winning. The judge glanced at me, his face giving away nothing. For a few seconds, the courtroom was filled only with the quiet buzz of the ventilation system and the steady scratching of the court reporter's pen. I looked at the woman who had spent most of my life convincing people that she was the reason I survived. Saved me. The word almost felt absurd. She had repeated that claim so many times that it had become part of her identity. Family members believed it, neighbors believed it, friends from church believed it, and now she was repeating it under oath. According to her version of reality, I was an ungrateful son who would have ended up homeless if she hadn't sacrificed everything for me. She portrayed herself as a devoted mother and painted me as the child who repaid kindness with betrayal. The problem with a lie is that it survives only as long as nobody asks for evidence. And on this particular day, evidence was exactly what I had. The judge folded his hands and glanced down at a document. So, he said carefully, they truly don't know about this? The confident smile on my mother's face flickered. Her attorney immediately looked confused. Know about what, Your Honor? He asked. Instead of becoming nervous, I felt strangely calm. For years I had imagined this moment, not as a dramatic confrontation or a scene filled with anger, but as something quieter. A moment when facts would finally speak for themselves. The judge looked directly at me. Mr. Carter, he said, would you care to explain? I slowly stood from my seat. Across the courtroom, I watched my mother's confidence begin to unravel. The wooden benches, the fluorescent lights, the curious faces around us, all of it faded into the background. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the scared teenager she could intimidate. I wasn't the young man she could shame or manipulate. And within moments, everyone in that room was about to discover the truth she had spent 23 years hiding. The truth is, I began. The color drained from my mother's face. She's not the person who saved me. For the first time that day, fear appeared in her eyes. My name is Ethan Carter, and for most of my life, people only knew the version of me that my mother created. According to her, I was difficult, selfish, and fortunate to have someone as devoted as she was. Every success I achieved somehow became proof of her sacrifice rather than my own hard work. If I earned academic honors, she claimed she pushed me to succeed. If I secured a good career, she told people she guided me there. Whenever I overcame challenges, she reminded everyone that none of it would have happened without her. Eventually, people stopped asking for my side of the story. I learned at an early age that defending myself only made matters worse. My mother had an extraordinary ability to shape people's perceptions. She could cry at exactly the right moment, twist a conversation with ease, and leave reasonable people questioning what they had witnessed themselves. By the age of 16, I understood something important. Truth and proof were often two very different things. My father passed away when I was 9 years old. After his death, my mother became the center of every decision in our lives. She controlled the finances, managed the family records, and became the gatekeeper of our history. To everyone else, she appeared to be a hard-working widow doing her best to raise a child alone. What they never saw were the missing documents, the hidden correspondence, and the opportunities that mysteriously vanished whenever I became too independent. For years, people underestimated me because I rarely argued. They mistook silence for weakness. What they didn't realize was that while my mother spent years controlling the narrative, I was quietly collecting pieces of the truth. Her betrayals were never obvious enough to attract attention. That was precisely why they worked. She preferred subtle damage over public conflict. At family gatherings, she would smile warmly before casually telling relatives how sensitive I was whenever someone complimented me. Everyone would laugh, and I would force a smile while she enjoyed the attention. When I purchased my first car with my own money, she immediately told people she had helped pay for it. She hadn't contributed a single cent. I still remember watching her stir her coffee while making that claim, never once meeting my eyes. Whenever I attended work events, she introduced me as the boy I practically carried through life. To strangers, it sounded affectionate, but the deliberate pause before those words always carried another message. It was her way of reminding everyone who she believed deserved the credit. Even after I moved away and built a life of my own, the pattern continued. Important papers disappeared whenever I asked questions about my father's estate. Phone conversations suddenly ended when certain topics came up. Relatives who had always been friendly became distant after speaking with her. Individually, none of those things proved anything, but together, they formed a pattern. I began noticing the nervous glances she exchanged whenever conversations drifted toward the past. I noticed the tension around her eyes and the way she changed subjects with practiced precision. It wasn't guilt I saw. It was fear. And the more attention I paid, the more I realized she wasn't protecting her image. She was protecting a secret.